All right, guys, so today in front of me from Jack Daniel's, we have their straight Tennessee rye whiskey finished in high toast oak barrels. So this straight Tennessee rye was barreled in 2014, then rebarreled in high toast no char oak barrels in 2019. So one of the unique things about Jack Daniel's is their cooperage, which gives them the unmatched ability to experiment with different specifications to see how different materials and techniques can impart different flavors and aromas. Definitely excited to get into this this high toast release here, guys. So without further ado, let's go. All right, guys, so as I stated, this is a straight rye whiskey finished in high toast oak barrels. Comes in at 101 proof. Let's go ahead and get in the nose. If you could put a s'mores into a glass, that's exactly what this smells like. There's a ton of marshmallowed sweetness, slight hint of like milk chocolate in there. I do pick up, there are some baking spices in there along with some of that rye spice. The rye spice does shine through, so a lot of those aromas aren't, they don't necessarily hide that rye. You pick up a lot of cinnamon, a lot of nutmeg. Again, you do pick up some nice kind of milk chocolate in there, like a little bit of a sweet vanilla as well. But that like chocolatey marshmallow sweetness that you start to get is just it's very rich, it's very dense, and that high toast almost gives it this not necessarily a smoky aroma to it, but the high toast you definitely get that aroma when you go further into the glass. Further away from the glass, you do start to pick up, like I said, some of those baking spices, that rye spice, some cinnamon, some nutmeg. Further into the glass, you start to pick up some of that like chocolate, a very little bit of that like that toastiness from the finish. Yeah, I mean the baking spices. The more this opens up, the more that baking spices really start to develop, but then it just still remains very sweet on the nose. That marshmallow sweetness, that chocolate just reminds me of the s'mores. Then with that little bit of like toastiness from it, it just reminds me of being out by like a like a campfire somewhere. Beautiful nose, guys. Let's get into the palate. Cheers. I said on the nose, it's like having a s'mores in a glass, and the palate definitely translates to that. You do pick up, especially on the back end. The back end of this is just chocolate, spice. There's like a sweet vanilla that kind of flows from the front to the middle and the back. But that like toasted chocolate is ridiculously good. And again, it's not super hot. It's only 101 proof, but those rye spices make it feel like it's a little bit hotter than what it comes off. But nice sweet vanilla there up front, and then right to the middle of the palate and into the back is where you start to pick up some of those rye spices, some cinnamon. That toasted chocolate that's on the mid palate and into the finish is just absolutely delicious. It's so good, very very sweet and spicy. So it's not overly sweet and it's not overly spicy. Great balance between the two. The finish kind of lingers on. I would say it's a medium to long finish, almost on the longer side. It's surprisingly that it just lingers. It just really just kind of lingers on into the back of the palate. You still like after it's gone down, you still kind of pick up a little bit of that toasted chocolate there on the back of the palate. Rye spices kind of fade away, but it's an amazing first sip. Let's get into the second one. After that first initial sip, that rye spice started to kind of fade away, and it brings forth more of that toasted chocolate, more of the baking spices, the cinnamon, some of the nutmeg. That vanilla is still there on the front of the palate, not overly dominant. But that again, that high toast just plays a huge part in the flavors on this one. It played a big part in the aromas as well, but more so with the flavor of the whiskey. That chocolatey, toasted. There's almost a nutty aspect to it. It's almost like maybe like a little bit of a walnut. It's like the flavor of like a walnut, and then almost the slight like it may get like a little dry there on the back, but then it starts to kind of like really mingle around the palate and starts to get a little viscous. It's not very viscous, but it does leave a pretty nice coating around the mouth. But yeah, the rye spice has definitely faded away, but brought forth more of that chocolate, that those kind of toasty, that toasted note, that s'mores, slight vanilla there on the front. Man, this is really good. And 101 proof. I mean, this is easily crushable. Yeah, I mean, again, rye spices at this point are just about gone, but the baking spices still are kind of lingering around. The cinnamon, the nutmeg, intertwined with that milk chocolate and that toastiness. A little bit of kind of like sweet vanilla there on the front of the palate. And then again, into the back of the palate, into the finish is, that chocolate is still present. And it lingers. It really does kind of linger on. And there's like that. There's a definite nutty note on the mid to back palate, almost into the finish. And I'm wondering if that has something to do with some of that high toast. Because typically with a high toast, I don't necessarily get a lot of nuttiness from that, but I think the high toast is bringing that flavor forth there a little bit. But it's nice because it blends in really well with that chocolate and that toastiness from the barrel. And then the cinnamon and the nutmeg that still kind of continue to play around with the palate there. I mean, the baking spices on this one are, I got those on every sip. The rye spice was a little dominating on that first sip and kind of hid those two. But after the second, and the third sip, those rye spices, kind of faded away. But then, the baking spices started to develop a little bit more, and that chocolate, the sweet vanilla on the front, that toastiness, a little bit of a walnut there on the back of the palate, and into the finish. Again, medium to long finish, almost on that longer side. I love this bottle. This is a fantastic bottle. I think the price range is right around like $40 if I'm not mistaken. It is limited edition. Proof wise, again, I mean, the first sip drank a little hotter than 101 proof. I think that was just because the spiciness, and it was my first drink of the day. But then, it started to really drink its proof after that second and third sip, right around that 101 proof mark. But again, another stellar release here, guys, from Jack Daniel's. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to send a big thank you over to the team at Jack Daniel's for supplying me with this bottle here to review on the channel. Again, guys, this is a very flavorful pour. I think this one is going to surprise a lot of people. A ton of flavor. There's some viscosity. It's not super viscous, not super oily, but there is like a nice viscosity to it. The flavors definitely kind of saturate there around the palate. Beautiful, like it just reminds me of a s'mores, like being by a campfire. That high toast definitely plays a part not only in the aromas but then on the palate as well. It's beautiful, like chocolatey, rye spices, cinnamon, some nutmeg, and then like a hint of like maybe a walnut there that kind of flows from the mid to back of the palate and into the finish. Again, I mean, I think this is a great release from Jack Daniel's. I am going to go through this bottle fairly quickly, so I'm going to need to go find another one of these and grab it before they disappear, because this is a great pour. Great release from them this year, guys. So if you're looking for more reviews like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. And until next time, guys, stay dusty.